Welcome back to the Ultra Reviewer, where we discuss all things Ultraman. It's good to see you guys again. It's my first time in front of the camera, and I'm very excited because the new Ultraman Trigger series just premiered last Sunday, and I am looking forward to what this new series can bring. As of now, when I'm recording this video, there's only been one episode that has been released. So I'll talk about why I think this series is so important. So to understand why it's so significant, we need to look at who Ultraman Trigger is based on. Ultraman Tiga is who Ultraman Trigger is based on, and Tiga has been around for a good 25 years. What Tsuburaya has mentioned in press conference and in their media statements is that Ultraman Trigger isn't a reboot, it isn't a remake. It was just, and I quote one of the statements, it was so that the new generation of love Ultraman Tiga again. So if that's the case, why not just promote Ultraman Tiga more, right? Why create a new series, right? The thing is that Ultraman Tiga has not lost its popularity. It's been around long enough to not be forgotten, and the character has made cameos. Ultraman Tiga's powers has been used by other Ultras, especially the new generation. That being said, when talking about why I feel this series is really important, is because although Ultraman Tiga is this super famous and important character in the Ultraman franchise just as whole, and it's also a fan favorite by the way, is because the Ultraman Tiga story arc, it's kind of messy. First introduced to Ultraman Tiga, what we were told is that this is some being of light which walked the earth 30 million years ago. And at the time that he was at Earth, he protected Earth and was a hero, and basically once he fulfilled all his duties, he returned out into space or wherever to continue being this being of light and left his physical body in Earth. 30 million years later, the Guts team goes off to find this so-called Titan and finds a stoned version of this hero. In the first episode, the main character known as Daigo Madoka transforms into light involuntarily, enters the body of Ultraman Tiga and becomes the human host of Ultraman Tiga throughout the whole series. This seems pretty straightforward, right? But what we are told in the Ultraman Tiga Final Odyssey, which is a movie that was post-Ultraman Tiga series, the whole idea that came out from that movie was that Tiga was not a good guy from the start. He was actually a bad guy. His original form was known as Tiga Duck, and he fell in love with Yuzare. She convinced him to turn to the good side, caused him to make enemies. The enemies were once his friends. So that's where the original Camila, Hydra, and Taram came from. He basically stole their powers and became the Ultraman Tiga that we know today. It was the first time that we showed how a good guy had a bad origin. This is okay so far, even though that origin kind of has some plot holes in it. But it becomes even more confusing because in the beginning of the Ultraman Tiga series, Daigo was told that he was the only one who could transform into Tiga because he was light and human. But what happens in the end of the series is that all the children around the world transform into light and enter the body of Ultraman Tiga, and that's how Ultraman Tiga eventually defeats Gatonzoa. All of that is fine because now we have like a whole new story. It seems as though anyone could become light, but probably Daigo is the only one who's strong enough. But then we move forward into the Ultraman Tiga and Ultraman Dyna movie. This movie is part of the Ultraman Dyna series. What happens here is that Shin Asuka basically gets defeated pretty badly and is reevaluating how he wants to be an Ultraman. After a short victory, he's trapped in a monster and basically experiences death. And again, with the help of all the children around the world, Tiga is revived, but with the help of Asuka. So basically, this is the same Tiga, but instead of Daigo, there's Asuka in it. How it makes sense is that anyone could not just help Ultraman get revived, but can actually be Ultraman himself. And you could see that Asuka was just as efficient as how Daigo would be. But this becomes even more complicating in a way, is because when we have the Ultraman Tiga 2 movie, Return of the Ancient Giant, there the son of Daigo goes back to the past a little after Ultraman Tiga existed. He tries to transform, but is unable to fight the way his father would. But boy named Amu in that story was revealed to be the real Tiga, and he fought efficiently and was a lot stronger than Tsubasa, who's the son of Daigo. Now, all of this is pretty confusing because at one time we have just Daigo can be Tiga, and then suddenly everyone can be light, but Daigo still needs to be Tiga. But then anyone can be Tiga and just be as strong. But then anyone can be Tiga but not as strong. So this kind of just makes everything pretty confusing. And to make things even worse, we suddenly have instances where Tigas in the Spark Dolls or in the starting of the Ultraman Ginga series, which doesn't make any sense because present day, the original Tiga is unknown. We don't know where his body is. We don't know if Daigo still has the ability to transform into Tiga. So all of that it's kind of all over the place. And that is why I feel we need an Ultraman Tiga series. I'm super grateful to Tsuburaya because they've done this. Is that really enough, to bring a new character into the franchise? The thing is, present day, there is no human host for Ultraman Tiga. If you want to bring Ultraman Tiga into any movie or any series, it wouldn't make perfect sense that Tiga would come with the human host that he's attached to. Because right now, again, we have no clue whether he's even alive. Anyone has been Tiga himself. So right now, let's say there was a story whereby Ultraman Zero has gone on a mission and he absolutely needs Ultraman Tiga because Ultraman Tiga has a special ability where he can absorb unlimited amount of light energy into his body. So I'll explain that in another video why. But if Zero or any other Ultras ever absolutely needed a Tiga, it would not make any sense to bring the original Tiga back. And the thing is, having a new Tiga with all the same abilities as the original Tiga and maybe even stronger kind of solves that problem. Because if Tsuburaya needed a Tiga to get into battle where he needed to absorb a huge amount of light, or the reason the plot requires a Tiga to be there, the best way now Tsuburaya could do that is by bringing in Ultraman Trigger, because Trigger is essentially Tiga. So that kind of solves that, and because now Trigger has a new human host, Tsuburaya could just keep Kengo with Trigger, and whatever missions in the future, whatever cameos required, Kengo could return, rather than trying to get Daigo in. Related to the reason I just said that, I do feel there's another purpose to having Ultraman Trigger in, is because while Ultraman Tiga is not the newest character, Ultraman Tiga isn't the oldest character either. Throughout the 25 years of his history, Ultraman Tiga is the most used character throughout the franchise. Going back to the new generation, these characters who all used Ultraman Tiga's power in some matter, except for G. And then you have some other characters here and there who somehow know about Ultraman Tiga. So Tiga's kind of always stayed very relevant to the Ultraman franchise. But to some level, it feels almost like Tiga's kind of overused. So having Ultraman Trigger kind of fulfills that void of let's have a Tiga but not exactly Tiga. Again, because Trigger isn't Tiga but he kind of is, it kind of helps us put him in places that we wouldn't want Tiga to be in. Also, Trigger would most likely be more powerful than Tiga. So having Trigger in certain scenarios would definitely add more power to whatever cause he's fighting for, rather than having Tiga whose power levels we aren't very sure where's the limit at because of his unlimited amount of power to absorb energy. And I know it kind of goes in a circle, because probably Trigger has that ability too, but I'll cover that in another video. Well, that's it from me today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and do place some requests, suggestions, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Ultra out.